High up in these jagged peaks where the air is thin, adventurous souls have always sought to touch the very ceiling of our world. It reminds us of folks like Frank Wells, that big Disney boss who traded his business suit for climbing gear to chase snowy dreams. Then you had Sandy Hill Pittman, a wealthy socialite from the city, who decided she wanted to swap high society for high-altitude thrills. What started out as a simple hobby quickly turned into a burning fire, transforming her whole life into a quest for the highest peaks. Now folks say human beings simply were not built to survive above 26,000 feet in that cold place they call the death zone. On a crisp afternoon in May 1996, Sandy finally stood right on top of the world, celebrating a victory she had chased forever. But getting there was a mighty long road, seeing as she had tried and failed to conquer this mountain 2 times in years past. She spent a small fortune trying to climb the treacherous Kangshung face, hiring the absolute best guides money could buy to lead the way. Frustration boiled over one time when she ripped a gold necklace right off her neck and tossed it deep into the snowy white abyss. This mountain was the final jewel in her crown, as she aimed to be the 3rd woman in history to scale the 7 summits. Her team was led by Scott Fisher, a tough-as-nails guide from Seattle, who ran a company called Mountain Madness with a true adventurous spirit. They had a solid crew of guides and Sherpas working hard to haul gear and prepare the way for 8 hopeful clients that season. Now, despite what some folks might whisper, Sandy was actually a strong climber who had more experience on ice than many other folks there. She certainly stood out at base camp with her high-tech gadgets and fancy gear, making sure everyone knew she walked with the powerful crowd. As the big day approached, the mountain got crowded with climbers from all over, everyone jostling for a spot on that narrow, snowy ridge. They pushed hard up the spine of the mountain, battling thin air and exhaustion, determined to stand where few people have ever stood before. But reaching the top is only half the battle, because most of the real trouble happens when you turn around to head back down. Sandy was running on empty by the time she started down, her energy drained away by the brutal cold and the lack of oxygen. Other climbers were fighting their own battles nearby, and it became clear that this mountain was about to test them like never before experienced. She could barely put one foot in front of the other, collapsing into the deep snow as her strength finally gave out on her. Charlotte Fox stepped in with a desperate measure, pulling out a needle to give Sandy a powerful shot that might just save her life. That sharp needle went right through layers of heavy down suit and fleece, delivering a potent medicine to wake up her tired, frozen body. Then the weather turned mean as a snake, blinding them with white snow and forcing everyone to scramble down those slick, icy, fixed ropes. They wandered lost on the South Col, unable to see their own hands in front of their faces as the storm swallowed them whole. Huddled together in a tight pile on the ice, they shook uncontrollably while trying to share whatever warmth they had left in their bones. Around midnight, the storm broke and the stars came out, prompting a brave Russian guide named Anatoli to head out into the dark night. He ventured alone into that freezing darkness, risking his own neck to search for the lost souls who were slowly freezing on the mountain. After searching for what felt like an eternity, his headlamp finally cut through the gloom and spotted the climbers huddled together in the snow. He grabbed one climber to hustle her back to safety, while brave Tim Madsen stayed behind to keep watch over Sandy until help returned. When Anatoli came back for Sandy, she was too weak to stand, whispering that she just could not move her legs another single inch. With strength like a grizzly bear, he dragged and carried her across the ice, determined to get her back to the safety of camp. When the sun rose the next morning, Anatoli went back out to look for his friend Scott, hoping against hope he was still alive. But tragically, he found Scott frozen solid in the snow, his oxygen mask still on his face, lost forever to the cold mountain air. Back in the tents at Camp 4, the survivors sat in stunned silence, their minds reeling from the horror they had just lived through. As they limped back down to base camp, heavy news arrived that Rob Hall had also perished high up on the treacherous South Summit. Folks heard the heartbreaking story of how Rob patched a call through to his pregnant wife, saying his last goodbye before the end came. The death toll climbed to 8 lost souls that season, and a somber memorial service was held to honor those who never came home. Before heading down, the group made a solemn pact not to speak a word to the press until everyone was safe off the mountain. But the minute they reached the town below, Sandy wasted no time charting a pricey helicopter to fly her out of that rugged valley. She paid thousands of dollars for her own ride out, leaving folks wondering why she did not help organize a ride for the team. She made a beeline for the hotel phone in Kathmandu, fielding calls from reporters while her teammates were still shaking off the mountain dust. While others were nursing their wounds, she was spotted lounging by the pool, soaking up the sun like she had not a care. When the gang finally gathered for a group picture, Sandy showed up looking fresh as a daisy with her hair done and makeup perfect. You could see the bone-deep weariness on every other face, making her polished look stand out like a diamond in a pile of coal. She threw a little cocktail party that night, but the air was thick with tension as folks remembered the friends they had left behind. Writer John Krakauer was there too, noting how the guides had worked themselves to the bone while some clients just looked out for themselves. Sandy ruffled feathers when she claimed there were no heroes up there, saying everyone just did the job they were paid to do right. She hopped on a plane back to New York City, leaving the dust and death of the Himalayas far behind in her rearview mirror. The newspapers back home were not kind, calling her Princess Sandy and criticizing how she turned a tragedy into her own personal publicity show. Now, to be fair, she climbed that mountain with grit, but folks will always argue about the choices made when the storm hit hard. Standing on the lower glacier looking back, a climber realizes that the mountain does not care about your bank account or your social status. Those ancient peaks have stood watch for millions of years, silent witnesses to the triumphs and the tragedies of all who dare to climb. In the end, all that remains are the ghosts of the past and the cold wind that blows forever across the roof of the world. Every step you take on that crunching blue ice is a gamble, knowing one wrong move could send you sliding down into the deep. Colorful prayer flags whip in the wind, sending out silent hopes and blessings for every soul trying to survive in this harsh, unforgiving place. Breathing through a mask becomes your only lifeline, as that precious oxygen hisses softly to keep you alive where the air is razor thin. You put your whole faith in a thin nylon rope, holding on tight as the wind tries its best to blow you off the mountain. Under a blanket of stars so bright they hurt your eyes, the mountain sleeps in a frozen silence that feels both beautiful and terrifying. One look down into a bottomless crevasse is enough to remind any climber that the mountain has plenty of dark places to hide you. Even the simplest task, like pulling a zipper, becomes a war as your frozen fingers fumble and fight against the biting cold and ice. Seeing those empty oxygen tanks scattered around reminds a person that every single breath up here is a borrowed luxury you must pay for. Crossing those shaky metal ladders over a deep blue pit requires a whole lot of faith and a steady pair of boots on your feet. It takes hours just to melt enough snow for a drink, a simple chore that becomes a monumental struggle when you are this exhausted. When you slip on that slick ice, you better have the reflexes of a cat to drive that axe down and save your own hide. The wind up here does not just blow, it scours your face with ice crystals that feel like a million tiny needles stinging your skin. You strap those metal claws onto your boots tight, knowing they are the only thing keeping you from sliding all the way down to the bottom. Looking up that endless wall of blue ice makes a person feel smaller than a grain of sand facing the might of the great creator. Checking your altimeter becomes an obsession as you slowly creep higher, counting every single meter that brings you closer to the roof of the world. There is a special kind of magic when the sun hits those peaks, painting the snow in colors that make you forget the biting cold. One minute you are walking with friends, and the next the white fog swallows you whole, leaving you alone in a world of pure white. That heavy pack on your back feels like it weighs a ton, pulling you down toward the earth while your spirit tries to soar high. Nothing is more frustrating than reaching for a drink only to find your water has turned into a solid block of useless ice once again. When that radio goes silent and all you hear is static, the loneliness hits you harder than a freight train coming down the track. You have to shovel snow constantly just to keep your flimsy shelter from collapsing, fighting a battle against the elements that never seems to end. Under the light of a silvery moon, the mountain looks peaceful enough to touch, but do not be fooled by its quiet and cold beauty. You rub your hands together until they burn, terrified that the frost is going to take your fingers if you stop moving for 1 second. Moving through those towering blocks of ice is like walking through a loaded trap, never knowing when the whole thing might come crashing down. We stand there pointing at the top, dreaming big dreams about standing on that pinnacle, unaware of the heavy price we might have to pay. You keep those goggles wiped clean, because seeing the path ahead is the only way to keep from walking off the edge of the world. That sudden jerk of the safety rope is the only thing standing between you and a long fall, a reminder of how fragile life is. A storm can shred a tent in seconds, leaving you exposed and vulnerable to the fury of a wind that wants to blow you away. Watching that needle drop to empty on your oxygen tank puts a cold knot of fear in your stomach that is hard to shake off. Eventually, the wind erases our footprints, and the mountain goes back to being wild and free, keeping its secrets under a blanket of eternal snow.